everybody, and welcome to today's episode of RISEUP Voices from the Frontlines. And today's episode is going to be one of our children and family issues episodes, and I'm extraordinarily happy to be bringing you Tasha Ina Church, an extraordinary empowerment coach who has a background that is going to blow your mind, and she is just a beautiful, wonderful person. So please welcome Tasha to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How's it going over there?
It's wonderful.
Nice.
So let's just start off by giving you the freedom to just tell people who you are and what you do.
Yes. So aloha, everyone. My name is Tasha Ina Church, and my Indigenous name is Imote, which means strives for empowerment. It's from the Stalo Nation. And I am here in Lahaina on the island of Maui in the Hawaiian Islands. And I teach empowerment coaching, but it's a broad spectrum. I actually do classes for empowerment self-defense, which is more of a holistic take on self-defense. Krista and I have had lots of talks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's doing all the stuff that I love. And so that was really cool. But I've been doing it for 23 years. I'm really passionate about it. And I just really had a lot of different life experiences, which led me to doing this work. And I believe in it. I think that everybody deserves to have self-defense training and empowerment training. Everybody deserves to have tools to stand up for themselves and boundary setting tools. As far as other work, I do a lot when it comes to self-care and self-healing. I believe that we have tools and self-care things that we can do on a day-to-day basis that lower our stress and anxiety and therefore help us stay healthier and live longer, which is always great.
I think that's a really interesting topic because people see the word empowerment, and I think the first assumption is self-confidence. That's the part that people seem to understand, but empowerment is a much bigger word. And in the trauma experience world, empowerment has a much bigger impact. Like, empowerment now encompasses healing and all of these different elements of self-preservation and self-awareness and all of this other stuff. I think it's one of those words that we're so used to hearing that it loses its impact.
Yes, it's true. No, I believe that, because I think we don't necessarily, even with self-defense, and you and I had this conversation, because we think of self-defense and we think of punches, kicks, blocks, how to get out of somebody strangling you or something along those lines, but we're not thinking about financial abuse, someone sexually harassing us at work or on the street, or people who are gaslighting you. And all of that affects your mental health and well-being. All of it can and eventually have a toll on your physical well-being if it's something that persists. Bullying for kids, I was bullied as a kid, and it severely affected my social emotional makeup. And it took a really long time for me to get back to a space where I was very open and I wanted to go out and have fun and play and socialize. I became very withdrawn. And so we don't necessarily understand these two connections of how they relate, but they're very integrated.
That makes me think of the idea of safety.
Yeah.
And how safety is not just a physical word. How we need that body, mind, spirit safety. And one without the others is not safe. We don't feel safe if we only have one without the others.
Yes, so true. I talk to people and you'll look at some people that on the outside, they look perfect. They have the great job. They have the great spouse. They have all of these things. But then behind closed doors, maybe they're dealing with sexual assault or they are dealing with emotional abuse from someone. And it's just shattering. And on the outside, maybe what you're seeing is actually the mask that they put forward to try and prove to not only the world, but themselves that they're okay.
You and I both work in the areas of human trafficking and domestic violence and overcoming childhood sexual abuse and all of those things. And there's very often minority populations are left out of the conversation, and even more so Indigenous populations. And I know you do some work specifically in that area. Would you
Yeah.
like to expand on that importance of bringing attention to that?
Absolutely. I am Indigenous to the Pacific Northwest area, and I do a lot of work with Indigenous women. And I think that it's important for us to shed light on a lot that happens. It's not just about what's happening in interpersonal relationships. It's also happening on a much broader scale and in the media. Women who are Indigenous, they're often looked at and dehumanized. There's the word exotic that's usually describing them, which exotic could be a bird. It could be a lot of other things. Could be a carpet. And when you're working with different populations, there's certain things that you have to address. For me, working with tribes, murdered missing Indigenous women is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I myself have had my own experience of actually being taken from a place that I was at, and I had to defend myself. And I know, Krista, you yourself have experience when it comes to that and human trafficking. And I think that it's really important for people to be able to have these conversations and normalize the conversations so that the people who are experiencing it on a day-to-day basis feel more empowered and safer to be able to share. And so that's what I continually try and do is to share that information. But I do workshops and trainings. I'm actually going to be going back to Washington and doing a workshop at ASHA, which is this really cool cultural center. And it's for BIPOC communities. So I'm excited to be able to do that and just work with different populations that really need these resources, but might not always have all of the tools or access to them.
Is there anything, a lot of our audience is military and first responder families. So we have a lot of first responder wives and husbands out there who are really community minded and really community oriented. Is there anything that people who are wanting to learn more or wanting to get connected to knowing more about these topics, is there anything that you suggest for them that's easy to access?
As far as just statistical data in general, RAIN is a great resource. You have Krista here who has a lot of resources as well. But looking into the different movements and educating yourself, I think it's just highly important. Look into murdered missing Indigenous women. Look into your local area and go into those centers that are for people of color and just have conversations and ask questions and get curious. I think that the more that we open up conversations with people who don't look like us, and that's all across the board. I don't care what background you're from, you are going to be opening doors to help your community. And I think that is just very important, very key. As far as resources go, obviously, I'll do my little plug-in. I have online courses, I have workbooks. I know Krista has a whole bunch of stuff too. So just taking the time, and even for me, when I was just starting to learn about all of this stuff, because I was very curious after different experiences, and we'll talk about those later. But for me, I just would take 30 minutes after school or after my job. I would get online and do some research, or I would order a book and do research there. I would actually try and start a conversation, and that was really scary for me. Start a conversation with somebody who I didn't know, who maybe was in a completely different age bracket, and talking to somebody and asking them questions about what it was like for them at their age and what it was like back 20 years before, what it's like now, what are the circumstances, because I wanted to know more and educate myself.
So now let's talk about your childhood a little bit. So who were you when you were little? What did you want to be? And did you always know this was your path, or did this kind of happen later?
Absolutely not. I, so I grew up actually on a farm. I grew up on 6 acres. I had chickens and rabbits and dogs and cats and horses. My parents were teachers, and something that they would do is they'd take me to the library every single week. And I'd get to pick out whatever book I wanted. Like I have this stack of books, and so for me when I was younger, I really wanted to be an author. I would look at these books, and my dad, he is Scottish, so he has like blue eyes, and I look at his picture, his wedding photo. It's the coolest thing ever of him having like this Scottish fro and all of this other stuff. He looks so cool. And then there's my mom, who looks like Cher. But yeah, there weren't any books that reflected people who look like my parents. And that's a question for a little kid who's mixed. Why aren't there any books that of couples that look like you too? And they said, well, there hasn't been a book that's been put out yet. And so that was my dream when I was little. I really wanted to be an author, and I did get that wish, but I had some experiences that really were eye openers that brought me to the work that I do now.
So go ahead and tell the story of your pivotal experience, that scare that happened to you.
Yeah, for sure. I actually call it the Trinity of Change. And so there's some really big things that have happened in my life as I shared. I've had multiple stalkers. And my first experience going into a martial arts school was because I met my first stalker at 15 years old, and he was 32. And he followed me around, and I found out 2 years later. And I was so lucky because of my parents and their background. My mom taught self-defense in the 70s, and my mom and dad did martial arts. And so I had a lot of really good skills. They did say it's straight training, they did nonviolent communication. And so I actually called this person up on the phone because he used to call me his little sister. And I realized that he was grooming me, because he would invite me over when I was doing Running Start and going to college classes and say, hey, I'm just right next to the college. If you need a break, you could come over and play video games. I've got food. What teenager doesn't want that?
Right.
And didn't think anything of it. But then I just started seeing him following me around in different places, late hours. I would see glimpses where I thought, oh, that's weird. What is that? And I ended up finding out that he wanted to take my virginity. And I woke up one day and he was on top of me, and I actually took a vase and I hit him with it and I ran. And then I called him up on the phone, and I said, look, I'm going to talk. You're going to listen. I don't want you to come near me ever again. If you are thinking about saying something, don't say it. If you see me in the halls at college, walk away. And I said, do I make myself clear? I have never heard, there were cuss words I didn't know. I was learning so much. And so I had just a plethora of cuss words that he said over the phone. And I just remember my face getting red and my body heating up. And I just was telling myself, breathe. And I waited until he was done. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't think you heard me. Let me repeat myself one more time. And so I repeated it and I said, do I make myself clear? If you don't do these things, I am going to share with my family who he knew and he called his parents, my brother who he was friends with, the school where he goes to school. And he goes, yeah, clear. And he slammed the phone. And so I joined a martial arts school right that next week. I just really wanted to be in a place where I could learn and grow. And I thought that was where I would find it. And I learned so much at that school. So much. I had a sensei, Venus Coburn, and it's rare to have a female sensei. There were a lot of male instructors there, and it was mostly men at that school. But I was so grateful to have this female sensei. And so I learned a lot from her, and I did learn a lot from all of the other instructors as well. But I used to, after those experiences, I was very closed off. And one of my martial arts partners, I had this self-defense partner who truly was like a big brother, the kind that you want. And he liked going out salsa dancing. He's, look, this will be social. You need it. You should go out. You move your body. You'll feel good. I'll be right there in case if anybody tries to mess with you. And so it was great. And I used to go out and I got addicted to that. And at that young age, I didn't want to go to therapy or talk to people about my problems. I didn't let my parents know about the stalker because, and this is something that I think that parents should really understand, if they find out something horrible has happened to their child and that child didn't tell them, it's not about a trust factor. It's not that they don't love you. It's that they love you so much that they don't want you to worry. I just didn't want my parents to worry. And so I did. I went out and I would go out five, 6 nights a week to go dancing because that was my outlet. It was like, okay, I have these issues that I haven't dealt with. I do martial arts and I was teaching at that point and really enjoyed it. But I was dealing with a lot of sexual harassment at the school and some different issues that were coming up at the school. And so I would go out salsa dancing and I loved it. I truly did. And I would let everybody know that I teach martial arts. So it's like to back off. So I did that for a year and I never wanted to date anybody in the salsa community. I really just at that point didn't want to be touched or around. And that's an interesting misconception that people have. It's it's nice to be social and appreciated, and salsa is very like sexy, but there's all of these rules. Like you're over here, I'm over here. I can stiff arm you if I want to, which happens so many times. After a year of being in the salsa community and dancing with all of these different people, which was really lovely, I did have someone who I danced with consistently ask if he could buy me a drink. And I remember having a weird feeling, just a pause. And I thought, and he goes, come on. And I said, one drink. And I watched him go get the drink, brought it back, and he roofied me. He actually roofied me. He took my keys, he took my car, and he drove me from the ballroom that I was at to his home over an hour and a half away, the opposite direction of my home. And it was very scary. I don't know if out in the audience, if you have experienced being roofied or if you don't know much about it, but there's lots of different drugs that somebody might use to put into your drink that can incapacitate you. And for me, I was incapacitated, but I could see, hear, think. And so I just remember looking out the window, looking down at my feet and looking at my hands. And I kept on telling myself, move, like move, you have to move, like the whole drive. And I just kept on looking over at him, like, thinking, why are you doing this to me? What did I do to deserve this? And so we got to his house. He carried me up And at that point, I had remembered just at the tail end of the car ride, my toe started to move and my finger started to move. And he carried me up to his room and I waited until he left. And I just told myself, you are going to get up and you're going to move. And so I got up and it felt like syrup. That's the best way I could describe it, is like moving through syrup and trying to walk. And I fell over onto where the table was and I grabbed my keys and I stood back up and waited, and he opened the door and I hit him in the face with the keys. And I did my best to run. I fell down a flight of stairs and then I had to run to the car and I drove myself home. Again, I talked to parents about this, and I think that it's so important to know, because a lot of people, they say, oh, well, why didn't you just call the cops? I called my best friend when that happened, because again, I didn't want my parents to worry. They were saying, call the cops. And I said, remember how we dress when we go out salsa dancing? What are they going to say to me? They're going to blame me. And that still, I talk to girls today who've had similar experiences, and they feel the same way about the police force. And it's sad, because that's supposed to be the place that you can go to feel safe. And for me, I did not call the cops. I drove 3 hours to sleep for a few hours, and then I had to go back to work and work a whole day. And that was my experience. But as I was driving home, I thought, you know what? I didn't use any of the moves that I teach in martial arts. And this is probably the most compromised I could be. And when I saw my self-defense partner, I asked him to go through all of our martial arts moves, but I wanted to wear 3-inch heels and a dress. And so we went through over 800 self-defense moves, and I took down notes on which ones actually worked while wearing 3-inch heels and a dress, and I put it into a curriculum. And so I created this curriculum for women and girls and started a girls program. And around that same time, I was working on publishing my first book. It was a children's book, and I was really excited. And it was a week before my book launch. Was getting ready, and I heard a knock on my door. And there was a maintenance man at my door. And he knew my name, like the apartment manager's name, not my name, the apartment manager's name. And so I let him in, because the whole area is locked. So he had to have gotten in from that. And he started asking me a lot of really personal questions. And then he said he was going to check the pipes in the kitchen. And I realized that this person was not a maintenance man. And so that was a really scary moment. I looked up, I saw this person who's 6'2", over 230 pounds, holding on to a foot-long wrench. And I looked around, and this is like the martial arts, the self-defense stuff. It's okay, where are my exits? I only have one door. There's a window, but it's the second floor. I'd have to break through and fall down. And then I'm looking around for what weapons. He had the kitchen, which meant all the knives were in there. I didn't really have anything except for my hands. And he came over, sat down. He brushed my hair away, said I looked really tense. And I remembered something from one of my trainings, where when there is an attacker, they have linear thought. They want to rob you, hurt you, rape you, kill you. So you have to disrupt their plan. And so I took my hand in the air and I shot it down between us. I made very close eye contact, and I said, look, you got to go back to work. I got to focus on what I'm doing right now. And he said, are you happy in your relationship? And I said, yeah, I'm happy. You need to go. And he got nervous, and he got up and he went into the bathroom, and I ran. and spoke to the property manager, and he didn't know this person. The neighbors found out that he had been there coming around once and just staring at my window. So yeah, those were these pivotal moments, like 3 pivotal moments in my life where I realized I wanted to create this curriculum and I did training, and never stopped. I've done martial arts training and 7 different styles of that, Japanese martial arts, Tai Chi. I took a warrior spirit training with Jeff Alexander, who taught Rocky Balboa for the movies. Of course, that did me. And then I've done 3 self-defense specific global, one with Act Global, and then another one with National Women's Martial Arts Federation. So I just continued to train and gain new skills and studying clinical psychology and psychological first aid, trauma-informed care. We put all of those together and we just continually add to the curriculum. Something that I loved talking to Krista was that that's what she's doing. There's a new training, I want to do this. There's a new training, I want to do that. And just continually, and that's what you want from a trainer. I think that we're just 2 people that globally, wherever you are, try and find a trainer who wants to find the best methods for you, not just the best methods for them or the things that they think are cool, but the stuff that's actually going to work. And I took those experiences that I had and I went and researched and studied people who actually went to jail for assaulting people and looked at common attacks that they had, ways that women got out of those situations, ways that people got out of those situations, read books like The Gift of Fear and The Body Keeps the Score, and looked into what I could do to best support my clients and my community. And so that's what I just continue to do, is constantly do that. I absolutely love this work because I see the changes in real time. And I'm sure, Krista, you do too. Like at the end of a workshop or training, it's the best feeling in the world to see. I had a woman who was 105 pounds and dealing with a lot of Asian hate. And she's lived in the United States, born and raised here. And she just broke that board and she was so proud of herself. And just to see her face just beaming, like, I can do this. And that's what we want for our clients, is for them to actually understand that they are capable. Like every single one of the people who is listening right now, I don't care what abilities you have, what weight you are, what age you are capable of defending yourself. You have tools, and things that you might think are a deficit, they can be an amazing asset.
Definitely. There are so many self-defense courses that people can take that are like an hour or 2, and you literally, like, the community will have these events and these parents think that taking their teenagers to these events is going to be all we need to do. So let's talk a little bit about the lifestyle of empowerment. That it's like, I've been doing martial arts for not very long, but I've done a lot of weapons trainings and like situational awareness trainings, and like the number of different things that go along with actually being able to protect yourself. It's a little bit bigger than a brief training allows.
Yeah, Krista hit it on the nose. Think about it. If you want to be good at something, do you just go one time? if I went to yoga and did a session, I'd be like, okay, now I'm gonna go teach over at such and such place. No, I have to practice that. For basketball, I played basketball in high school. I was a baller. I loved it. I would hours, I would be on court practicing and shooting from all different angles, looking at it from all different variations, thinking about the opponent, thinking about the different moves that could possibly come up. When I walk into a restaurant, and I know this sounds paranoid. When I walk into a restaurant, I'm like, oh, okay, oh, good. There's the first exit. Where's the second exit? Like, I want to be able to know where I'm going. I try and position myself where I'm usually at a wall to sit. And it's not just because I want something romantic. I want my back to a wall. So for me, I am constantly asking myself, what's scary to me? Because that's something that I want to explore. If you are with your kids and you're worried about them out in the world, I think that it's just good to even just sit down and ask them questions about like, what their daily routine is, where they're going, what they're doing. And it doesn't have to necessarily be in a pestering way, but it's okay if something happened, where would be a good spot for us to meet? Here are different resources for you on people who you can call if I'm not available. These are places that you can go. If you are suddenly nearby school and somebody starts following you, you're running to school or you're running to a lot of people or public space, lighting. At nighttime, when I work with nurses, they're like, oh, what do I do when I'm walking in my car at night? It's like there's different things that you can do, obviously, but it's also important for you to just be aware. So that awareness piece is so important just in your training. Sometimes for activities, what I'll do in classes is show me 3 things that are red. Show me 3 things that are green. What this person, are they left-handed or right-handed? And have people guess and start to question things. And that just builds your awareness. And so we think that with self-defense training, it's like you have to go in and do this hardcore training every single day. And for the moms, the dads, the people who have like 3-4 jobs, we know that you don't have time for all of that. That's not the expectation. Just continually educate yourself. Every single day, ask yourself, watching these podcasts, you will find a million tips. If people go to my social media, because like right now with inflation, things are expensive and some people can't afford my services, or they can't afford different services like books that I have or products, even though I try and aim to have those available for people. But I think that it's important for you to know that there's resources out there. People just go to my social media and I have a million demos if you just scroll down. So just continually learning. And if you can learn as a family, or if you can learn as with a group of friends, it makes you that much more stronger. And you will feel more resilient. You'll feel more capable. And that feeling, when you have something scary happen, intuition kicks in. When you walk in the world confidently, you are less of a target. And so just having that knowledge can prevent an attack right there.
You're going to love this one. So let's talk about, we often hear parents say these 2 things. I don't want to invade their privacy, and it's too scary. I don't want to scare my child by talking about this stuff. What is your opinion on that?
What is too scary is not being able to find your child. That is scary. It might be scary having conversations, but I talk to people a lot about being fearless. So fear less, focus on action more. When you are worried about these conversations, these are the conversations that you need to have. If you're worried about having the conversation, talk to somebody else who, and trust, get advice from different people who have actually already gone through it, or look into how you can bring about those conversations. But it's important to have the conversation. Invading privacy. The thing is that it's one thing to sit down and have an honest conversation and talk about expectations and hopes and boundaries. And it's another thing to raid your child's room, scan through all of their text messages and social media and all of that. I can understand privacy for youth, and I think that it's important that they're just kids, so they don't know what they know until they know. You need to be able to let them know. And sometimes stuff is already happening communication wise, and they don't know that it's inappropriate. They don't know that an adult talking to them, especially with the grooming situation with me, I wish that I would have had that conversation. And I don't fault my parents for not having that conversation with me, because they watched over me like hawks. They were around, they were like hover parents all over the place. I even had my dad as my 4th grade teacher at one point. So yeah, so just wasn't that expectation. Like, they knew where I was a large majority of the time. So it was like, oh, why would I have that conversation? Nowadays, especially with technology and the direction that it's going, oh my gosh, please have conversations with your kids. It can save them emotionally. It can save them physically from pain. It can save them from being bullied, because a lot of times they'll just take it. I had a conversation with my niece. I love my niece. I had a conversation with her, and something was happening at school. You better believe I contacted the principal, who is a friend of mine. Can you believe what's happening right now to my niece? And then she ended up getting conversations and having talks with people. And I wasn't the main pivotal. I'm sure that her parents were. I know her parents are very involved in everything that she does. And so are my parents, her grandparents. But yeah, it was just like one other person. And it's nice to have that support. They will thank you later when they're older. Like, I look back at the things that my parents did. Um, you know, I had accountability work when I was in middle school. I didn't know what that meant. It was like, what was my mistaken belief for yelling at such and such? I don't know, but looking back, I'm just like, oh, that was a great way to to learn how to treat other people. And I took that over other disciplinary factors. So I think that it's important for us to have these conversations and to be able to educate our youth as much as possible, even if they don't think they need it at that time.
I love the way you put that. Even if they don't think they need it at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know it would be super easy for us to probably talk for 3 or 5 or 10 hours, but we're short on time here. So is there any last words you would want to give to our community? Any final thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. One, I just want you to know again, you are totally capable of defending yourself, and you're worth defending. You are worth it. So just want you to know that regardless of what's happened in your life, you are deserving. And yeah, I'm rooting you on.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Krista.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today for RISEUP Voices from the Frontlines. And we will be adding all the links so that you can access all of the programs that we talked about. And don't hesitate to contact either one of us if you have questions, if you have stories, if you would like to be on this podcast and you have your own story that you would like to tell, or resources that you would like to share around these topics, please let me know. And again, we will be back next week. If you would like to sponsor this podcast, you can message me at battle2be.org, BATTLE, the number 2be.org, and know that if you would like to contribute to fund this podcast, all of the profits and all of the proceeds from this podcast are sent to a 501c3 nonprofit, battle2be.org, that serves families of our fallen heroes and ensures that resources are available for crisis response when and where they are needed. My name is Krista Fee, and I will see you next week.